Duke's OceanFest, a legacy of surfing, is sponsored by Surfboard Factory Hawaii and Kapolei. More boards, more brands than anyone.
Aloha! August in Waikiki means hitting the beach in the annual Duke's OceanFest. Duke's OceanFest is Waikiki's premier ocean sports festival, which celebrates Hawaii's famous beaches, surf legends, and the aloha spirit through competitions and cultural events in which Duke Kahanamoku, the father of international surfing himself, participated. This year, as Duke's OceanFest celebrates its 20th anniversary, we talked story with several outstanding and inspirational athletes from Hawaii who capture Duke's spirit of aloha and excellence in the ocean. Through their life stories, we see Duke's impact on them, Hawaii, and the world. Duke's OceanFest, a legacy of surfing, starts now.
One of the most influential figures in the world of surfing, Paul Strauch Jr., is one of the few surfers who can say they were mentored by the great Duke Kahanamoku. Paul was already a champion teenage surfer when he was selected to be a member of Duke's surf team in the 1960s. Still surfing in his 70s now, Paul continues to pass along Duke's legacy at the annual Duke's OceanFest.
I've always felt privileged to be introduced at an early age. I was 4 when I was taken down to the Waikiki. And my dad was very patient, and so he'd take me out on his 10-foot redwood board there was no fins on at that time. We'd go out to Baby Queens, turn around and catch a wave, a small wave, but it was just, I marvel, and I never forget that image of seeing all the fish dart back and forth between the seaweed as we were approaching, and the board would scare them away, but oh my God, it was like being in a giant aquarium. And then riding right up on the beach, with the board with no fin on it. And so it was that introduction that made me realize how special Waikiki is. I remember, I think I was 14 or 15 at the time. Bruce Brown I met and really liked him, and he'd come out with different movies, but The Endless Summer was his really, truly claim to fame. It was a fantastic story about surfing and about all these different countries that have, in one way or another, been influenced by surfing that all started here, in Hawaii. And, my relationship with Duke also played a big role with that too. And my dad knew him because they were friends, and so that's kind of the introduction that I had to Duke. I was just so fortunate to have had that experience, It's such a privilege, and I'll never forget that. I think often about Duke and miss him very much. Duke Kahanamoku had a gas station on Montserrat Avenue. Keone McVeigh, who had the restaurant right there in International Marketplace, he went and filled his gas, and one day, and he says, he went to pay the bill, and he says, "Aren't you Duke Kahanamoku?" And he says, "Yes, that's my name right there on the station." And so he says, "What are you doing, pumping gas?" He says, "Because it's my business." He says, no, we got to do something else. You shouldn't have to do this, or shouldn't even be seen putting, gas in a tank. So I'm gonna see what I can do. And then he was a showman as well, and so he arranged to get Don Ho and the Ali'is to sign a contract, and then became part of the show. And so that all really just blew up Duke's name, and brought it to a more contemporary crowd. Kima would, share the experiences that Duke, made for Hawaii, that made it so popular as a tourist destination, and his great surfing and his Olympic medals and swimming. And so it all kind of came together. He always wanted me to sit next to him. And I said, "Oh, you really want me to sit next to him? Why?" He says, "Well, because you can understand Hawaiian, and I like to talk in Hawaiian, so I don't want to be offensive to anybody else saying something in English. And he was a very, very sensitive man. So I said, sure, I'd be happy to. And so, and plus I cannot hear that well, so if you restate the question, yeah, I would lead him the question back to him, and it worked so well with him. And we were on a trip to California with Fred and Butch and myself. Keone arranged to have us front row and center for the Sammy Davis show, you know, which was fabulous. It was like an hour and a half long performance, and it was just incredible. So after the show, Keone says, you guys sit here, I'll be right back. And he says, I have great news, Duke, you can't believe what I arranged. We're all going back to Sammy Davis's dressing room to see him. Isn't that great? Are you excited, Duke? And he says, I think I'm gonna go back to the room. And so Keone says, you don't want to go and see Sammy Davis Jr.? And he says, he was like 5 feet away from me for over an hour. I saw a lot of him, yeah. And it was so cute, you know. I was so special. But Duke had that way of communicating, but he still never lost his graciousness, you know. I remember this was in the 1965 United States Surfing Championships in Huntington Beach. And so I was there together with him. He was the guest of honor throughout the event. And then they had the award ceremony. And for the senior men's, they called up the 6 finalists to the stage. And prior to that, everybody that was called up, starting with 6th place and working their way down to 1st, they all walked up, shook the hand of the director, kissed the queen, you know, walked up, got their trophy, shook the hand of the presenter, and then walked to the front of the stage and stood, and then each one filled in behind them, you know. So they got the 3rd place was Corky Carroll, and he was from California, and so he got up on the stage, didn't shake the hand of the contest director, walked past the queen, took the trophy, and walked to the front of the stage, and he kept walking back and forth like this, and then both standing with Duke and we're watching this. And so he finally found what he was looking for, when it was a big garbage can, you know. He walked to the front of the stage, took the trophy, looked down at it, and just threw it in the garbage can, and then stomped off the stage. Oh man, my chest was heaving, and I was gonna go back and talk to Corky and teach him a lesson, you know, about sportsmanship. And so, but I was standing right next to Duke, and I said, Duke, did you see that? And he says, yes, I did, Paul. And I said, what do you think about that? And Duke took a breath and he says, isn't it great? And I go, what are you talking about? And he says, these guys really want to win. That spirit, this is the spirit that you need to compete, you know? And you never can lose sight of that. And it took all the wind out of myself, relief from my chest and everything. Oh gosh, I let out a deep breath. And I said, you're right, Duke. You know, you just got to look past that and let them realize that on their own terms and in their own way, you know. And I never forgot that statement that he made. He was always humble, and I always gave it to the other guy, you know, in terms of generosity. But I'll share one more story about Duke. You know, there's an infamous surfboard ride that he caught from outside castles, and they were called bluebirds when they broke out there, when an extremely large south swell would come in. And he caught a wave on a 16-foot redwood board there and rode from there all the way to the Royal Hawaiian Hotel. And as the story went, he got off his board in front of the Royal Hawaiian Hotel. And it's always been a goal of mine to try and replicate that. And so one day, the surf came up as a very, very large south swell. And so I went out there, I waited for maybe almost an hour and a quarter for the set to come into the bluebird range. And I took off, and I tried to stay high on the wave to get me through those couple flat sections and so I could get down farther. And then, but I realized, you know, there's no way I'm gonna get to the Royal Hawaiian. And so I got as far as the Moana, and then it all closed out. It just made me think about what he did and those challenges were private to him, but how he was such an inspiration. And I just wish there were more Hawaiians and then part Hawaiians and even the non-Hawaiians here in the state, would just improve their communication and the way they treat everybody else in Duke's honor. He was a very special man indeed.